Welcome to Friday, everybody. Did you make it? What a
Barely.
fucking week. We are live with Rabble Rants. It is Friday, March the 21st. We are in spring. May that lighten people's moods a little bit because I guess the headlines are always a little bit heavy. My name is Justin McLean. I am your host alongside Joe Moran here. We I normally host Blueprints of Disruption. I would call that my day job, except it doesn't pay. And we have a special guest with us this week, as we always do. Ashley is back with us. Ashley, you want to say hi to the audience?
Hello. Thank you for having me.
We've got a lot of Canadian politics to unpack today, but there will be a Trump dump because there's a lot to keep up with happening south of the border as well, but an election incoming. So that'll probably dominate the discussion in the many branches of discussions that come from talking about Canadian politics from an anti capitalist perspective. Also, we'll talk about what's happening in Gaza, the lack of a ceasefire, and a couple happenings in relation to movements out there. So there's some court proceedings. I won't spoil it all for you, but then we'll move into our disruptive updates, which is even more updates from the grassroots. There's some calls to action there. There were some great actions that happened this week that we will unpack and how they relate to the discussions we're already having. And then, as usual, we will cap it off with a activist tip of the week. And this week we're going to talk about how to feed your neighbors guerrilla style. So, also, if there are any guerrilla gardeners out there, please get in touch with me. I want to do an episode on guerrilla gardening. A lot of them are afraid to talk, but I can keep you anonymous. Uh, there's lots of things we can do guerrilla style. We'll start with feeding. We'll start with feeding people. But yeah, so if you didn't already know, if we've not been anticipating this for so long now, there is a federal election imminent. We're going to get a writ drop, in like 3 days,
Yeah.
and we're going to spend the all of April pretty much in campaign mode. Yay! Everyone in Ontario is just so excited
Oh
to have
good.
another election. I feel bad for people who work these elections right now. They must already they exhausted, burnt out. I mean, we did not have a good turnout or result in Ontario, and now they've got to buckle up and do it all over again. Who wants to open up? What's your first reaction? Before we unpack the players, let's talk about the prospect of the election. You want to
Are we
hedge
surprised?
bets? Are we taking bets?
I mean, I,
No,
I mean, I think
no one's
it's
surprised.
no one's surprised. Everybody. I mean, even since the point when Trudeau announced his resignation, we all knew this is more likely was going to happen. It was either going to happen because as soon as government came back to back from proroguement, the parties were going to be voting non-confidence to drop it. Um, So with Carney now going into place to actually, he's saying that he's going to drop the writ. Like I'm not surprised. I mean, everything's to me is everybody's like, oh my god, he's going to drop the writ. I'm like, you not been
Who knows?
Yeah.
paying
Maybe he
attention to
won't.
anything?
Maybe it's a smoke show.
Yeah, it could be a smoke show. I mean, if he doesn't, I'll be surprised if he doesn't. But I'm like, again, this just feels like everybody's kind of making a big deal of no, this is what we do. This is how it works.
Does he not want to give Jagmeet the satisfaction of pulling the plug, or do you think maybe he's actually, by dropping the writ himself, he's letting the NDP off the hook? Because didn't they promise they would
I
pull
th-
down this government? Right? They kind of wanted that separation. That was supposed to be their moment where they'd be like, "We're breaking away from the liberals," but it looks like
Mm.
Carney's going to deny them that.
I don't know if it would have helped. Uh, I
True.
No,
mean, I don't know if it would have helped
maybe
any
a
of the
little,
parties.
maybe a little.
I don't know. It depends how they would have spun it. But I'm like, I don't know if it would have made much of a difference. Somebody, if even if Jagmeet was the one that called, that did a vote of non confidence, Pierre would be running off saying, "Oh, it's all me. See, they finally got it. I got it done." To which we're like, "Yeah, okay, sure, easy there." Um, to be honest, within a week, I'm sure we're going to forget who called the election because everybody's going to be campaigning anyways.
And I
Yeah.
think like we were ready for one with all the hoopla going on and the Liberal Party kind of rebranding itself. It feels like, that's not Trudeau's Liberals anymore. I mean, for what that's worth anyway, but big shift to the right for the Liberals in their leadership race. So I think it's only fair that folks get to vote on whether they want that or not. But I don't think it's going to shape down to that, right? It's just like, is anybody even hearing from the NDP? It feels like a two-horse race. Like it might always, but I feel like they've just kind of like that Homer Simpson meme, just
Yeah.
like even they're afraid of Polyev or the
Which is
conservatives. I know.
insane.
I'm waiting for Ashley to cut me off there. I'm
Yeah.
just going to let
Yeah.
you go.
But I
Because
do
that is
think,
what a lot of people are feeling, right? That's why you
yeah,
get chirped at so much when you go off on
yeah,
Carney like you will
yeah,
right here. Because
yeah,
people are like, well, that means Polyev and he's like Trump.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think Carney has to run an election now because I think the longer he is in a position of authority and people see like what his policies are and see like what kind of person he is, and the more time people are given to draw the connections between him and the Trump admin, the less likely he is to win an election. So I think he has to kind of get there fast so that he can secure his position, so that even when those things are just people are more like, I mean, those things are easy to discover already, but once they're more like people actually believe them more readily, he'll already be prime minister, so it won't matter. That's kind of like how I feel about it. Like he knows that his best chance at winning is right now, and that's what he's doing. So that's why he's rolling it out. But yeah, I mean, I do not understand how people can back someone with knowing absolutely nothing about him. Like quite literally, people who talk about Carney know nothing about him. So
well, even
wild.
people who've read the book, they're enamored with his book, right? They think
It's
they
so
do know
crazy.
him because they read what he decided to share about himself, right? Like he crafted this fucking book and they're
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
no, I've read his book, okay?
yeah. I know.
Stand down, give
I
the man a
know.
moment. And I'm just like, I don't know what to do with those. I
Like,
feel like just
are
move
we
on,
forgetting
Dessa.
that?
Don't bother.
Yeah, Trump wrote a book. You know who else wrote books?
Well,
Like a German mustache man wrote a book. Like, are we just going to just be like, because you wrote a book means that that's who you are? Insane
like,
to me. Insane.
Yeah, well, he sold
Trump
himself as like the
didn't write his book,
Sorry,
though.
Joe. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I was more of a quip of Trump didn't write his book though.
No, I know.
He had a ghostwriter.
Yeah,
Well,
of course. Yeah.
a lot of folks are saying like he can't really read. It's just silly. It's like a Pete Davidson interview where he's talking about the SNL appearance, and he's like, "Dude
Yeah.
doesn't read. He doesn't read." And then I don't know if it's true or not. I mean, I hear him speak. It's like he hasn't read, whether he can or cannot. He doesn't. But that's we're gonna so easily we get onto Trump. God damn it.
No.
And I feel like, isn't that what our election's really going to be about? Because not just the fear of whatever Trump is doing now, the tariffs and the border when it pertains to, I mean, if we're just looking at Canada, but it's also, he mimics Pierre in the social conservatism or that nasty shit that we're seeing play out, not just economically. I mean, they do have economic impacts. It's part of the discussion, but it's just really ugly white supremacist shit. Really ugly anti-trans, anti-gay, queer, just right across the board. Really, and it's not just rhetoric anymore, right? He's enacting policies that are putting people's lives at risk, that are putting women into men's prisons.
Yeah.
And beyond, like ending treatment for folks, and now he's deporting folks based on what color they are and importing fucking Africans. Right? Like white South Africans. He's saying like they have basically asylum status because they're being racially persecuted. So folks are seeing this and like going, okay, well, even if I agree with Ashley that economically they are the same, like they're all just going to do the bidding of capital, I think Carney will just make it look better. You know what I mean? He'll be maybe more savvy about it. It'll hurt just as much. but they don't want that other shit that comes with it, right? So like they'll do anything right now to shut people up about Carney because they feel like that's just giving air to Polyev. But, you know, he's our prime minister. There's shit people need to know. I'm swearing a lot today. I mean, I don't really care. But I told you it was one of those
Spicy
days.
Jessa today.
But yeah, so... And I'm not going to shut you up about Carney, that Ashley, but it's also just to remind folks that like there is, because I think like I was wrong about Trump, and I'll say that now, like where I was like, you know what, I mean, I wouldn't have supported Kamala still, but I didn't think there'd be such a stark difference. I didn't think he like would attack people in such concrete ways, right? Like the ways the Democrats, you know, didn't. And then he's doing all the other shit the Democrats did as well, but like in this really hyper way, you know, like it's manifested itself so quickly. And I do fear that at a Polyev. I still wouldn't vote for the Liberals. I don't know what the hell I would do if I was a voter. I mean, I'm outing myself.
I'm going to argue just quickly about like, because I think the reason why Trump is doing a lot of this stuff is because of the people that are in his administration. So like, I'm not talking about like the people that he's appointed into political positions. I'm talking about the people who actually control his administration, like these high-ranking technocrats, right? Like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and Mark Andreessen, like these like ultra wealthy, incredibly embedded, like all these people run CIA ops. Like they are just like part of the machine, right? And they are outspokenly the people running the administration. Like the Godfather, I saw multiple articles from like Business Insider, which arguably is an arm of the CIA, talking about how Peter Thiel is the godfather of Doge. Like it was his idea. But they all subscribe to one type of philosophy. It's dark enlightenment, but part of dark enlightenment is accelerationism. And accelerationism is essentially like you do as many things as possible to cause collapse. And so you do like you defund things, you cause chaos everywhere all the time in order to cause collapse, and then you impose your own new system. And they all subscribe to that. And I think Trump.
We don't know anything about accelerationism here.
Yeah, right.
Nothing.
Oh, you don't know anything? Oh, yeah, right.
I don't partake in it at all, ever. Never.
Yeah. So that's what I think. And so having the having the knowledge or really understanding that Mark Carney is part of that system, is part of that American oligarchy technocracy, because of his direct connections and all of the things, many things that he's done over his career to support technocrats, and is very real and you know, constant links with Peter Thiel, as well as Mark Andreessen, who's a venture capitalist as well. These people don't hang out with each other because they have differences of opinion. They hang out with each other because they subscribe to the same ideologies and they share the same goals, right? It's all like part of this like ridiculous cult that they're all part of. You know, it's crazy. But
it is, and I feel bad that you feel like you have to uncover this when he's been so blatant. Like, you're going to find yourself scratching your head, Ashley, a whole bunch, because you're going to have all these receipts, right, to show your argument, but it won't matter.
I know.
It won't matter.
Care.
People, it's kind of like around the Democrats where, like, there was that fear of Trump, and they're just like, I don't care about the genocide, just vote for Kamala, you know, like, forget all of it. We can't argue about that and this and the other thing. We can't expose our politicians for how bad they are because there's worse ones. And, like, that's all that's driving Canadian politics right now, right? Every time we talk about it, it's like, yeah, but it's the fear, it's the lesser evil.
But both Canadian and American, that's what we've been literally driven for. I don't know for how long now. We're constantly voting for the lesser evil. Yeah. Like it's you know, and I've had the debates and the arguments with people where they're talking about like, you know, and I've many times I had that whole discussion debate about just Kamala versus Trump, and they're like, I can't believe people are voting for Trump in regards to, with their views on Palestine, and no matter how I kept on framing it, and I was just framing it like, listen, if they vote for Kamala, it's going to continue in Palestine. If they vote for Trump, it's going to continue in Palestine. For people where this is their party, because this is their family, this is their, you know, their people connected, you might see a difference because that's how it's going to affect you. To them, they're going to be seeing family die either side. Those other issues that, yes, they are important, but to them at this point, they're looking at family dying, and that's kind of their priority right now. And it's as horrible as to say is, of all the craziness of Trump, um, I agree quite a few of the things, with the exception of maybe the deportation, but even still, um, the one good thing, and that took a bit to say, of Trump is that everything he's doing is very loud and hard to miss.
Mm-hmm.
And so...
So we think, we're assuming there's not
No, I
stuff
know.
happening in the back rooms. I think there
You're
is.
absolutely right. And so we can't tell what's going on in the background, but a lot of this stuff is just, a lot of the horrible stuff is just coming out publicly. And you're right. I'm expecting 4 years down the road, if he gets removed, because again, I'm not sure if he's going to ever get out of there. I'm expecting them to come back. It's like, oh yeah, we've just done an investigation of the past 4 years of him, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff that was also shady that we did not know about. Totally expect that.
Do you think we'll talk about anything other than U.S. influence on the campaign trail?
I mean, I think it's going to be hard to, as someone who's very interested in this stuff. The conversations that are going to happen, in my opinion, will be disingenuous, because unless you talk about CIA infiltration and the fact
They
that
won't.
I know exactly, right? So that's really what the threat is that the United States, which the CIA hasn't been embedded in Canadian politics for many, many, many years. It's nothing new. But I think the idea that we're talking about people hating, the American life or the American ideology, but then no one's going to talk about the fact that the reason why people hate it is because of the CIA, and the CIA is quite literally embedded in our politics, in everything, on our corporations, in our entire democracy. Nobody's going to talk about it, so it's going to be disingenuous. But yes, that's all they're going to hear about: tariffs.
Well, that's why I kind of roll my eyes when folks start talking about foreign interference as well. Yes. I was like, foreign? You mean not American, not British,
right? Not Israeli,
not white, white foreign interference.
Right.
That's all. It's China, Russia. Sorry, they count.
Yes.
Sorry, Russia.
I hate the Russians.
They're pretty white. So maybe that's not what it is, but there's a certain obviously political spectrum, but then othering. And it's like the U.S., even, social media tricks, all the other ways that they can pull off foreign interference. But, I mean, like Joe said, he's just doing it front and center. He's saying things like, oh, I'd rather deal with the liberal. Everyone can take that whatever way they want, whether he's trying to trick us, reverse psychology. We're so fucked up and zoned in on him that we're like, I don't even know what that means, right? But he's like, I'd rather deal with a liberal than with a conservative. And he is, or just the threat of tariffs alone, or the border threats, that is going to influence our election externally. And we probably won't touch on any of the key issues that we should be talking about, like disability rights here in fucking Canada, because federally, that's our only hope now for folks. And that's a nightmare. And housing, I can't imagine either of these two parties talking in earnest about housing or safe drug supply, right? Because they've already jumped on the fentanyl kingpin SAR train. And it's really going to degrade Canadian politics. I feel like it is all across the board. Sometimes I think all this Trump nonsense, not all of it, but part of it, is to allow all the other governments to be able to anchor in real hard neoliberals and to breed nationalism, which is actually very good for capital, right? And all of our reactions have also been very unhealthy towards our movement. All this nationalism shit is actually a step in the wrong direction. And yeah, I mean, there's lots. He's talking about Canadian sovereignty instead of land back now.
I know.
And it's just it's really ratcheting everything in, and if he accomplishes nothing else other than destroying the U.S. economy or whatever the fuck he's up to, he will have, I think, helped boost right wing right across the globe. All you can hope is for maybe a reactionary response to it. But I'm not seeing that in Canada, right? Like, oh, we have to do the opposite. It's like, oh, we have to cozy up as much as possible, but behave like him, but from, with our elbows up, with the Timmies in our hand, like it's very similar responses, but we're not really setting us apart politically. So.
Yeah.
No,
The nationalism is wild. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, by all means. No, you're absolutely right. The nationalism, while it's effective, as in especially we've always had. When it comes to Canada, we've always had this sort of sense of we're different than the U.S. and tapping in, like when Trump tapped into it, saying you're going to become the 51st state and strong armament, that tapped into a reflex, I think, as in almost every Canadian is like, no.
We went feral, man.
We did. It was, let's be honest here, it was an automatic trigger reaction. I had it. I'm not gonna lie. I think most of us do. And it's just an immediate reaction of, hell no, we are not the same. We will never be the same. And it's just that momentum that, everybody was tapping into. Carney came out with a very strong messaging in regards to it. Pierre was trying to come out with that messaging too, but unfortunately, he'd been so busy for the past couple of years in his messaging on what he's doing. Canada's broken, Canada's all this, that all of that messaging just worked against him. Mm-hmm. And suddenly it's like, no, you're clear. Anybody's tried to convince you that Pierre is a good idea. Well, he's been saying this broken thing this entire time. It's now, people are like, no, we don't believe you, like at all. So Carney's found a way to walk in and sort of just like, no, I totally believe in Canada because I was the governor and I know how to fix the economy and I know how to deal with this guy, and he's literally just walking in. That's it.
Yeah. Well, they've resurfaced a clip too of Harper in the House of Commons just blowing smoke up Carney's ass. He's talking about him years ago, right? He's like, and how great he was, and so, actually, like, that's ammo for you when you're like, they're the same fucking thing.
Yeah, well, they have this, they both they're both Bilderbergers, they people who go to the Bilderberg meeting, which is a very secretive meeting that happens every year,
Harper, I don't know his net worth, but I keep uncovering, not me personally, but I read stories and finding out he owns this, that, and the other thing. I mean, I didn't link it today because I didn't have the bandwidth for it, but even, so this is why I don't have it in my notes, but he owns like some oil wells in Alberta that haven't cleaned up their shit or haven't paid for their shit getting cleaned up. I apologize for not knowing the details, but it's like when they're uncovering politicians, you'd be surprised. And I'm thinking in my mind, it's probably Stephen Harper, because it was that other company that we were talking about that's CIA related that Stephen Harper sits on the fucking board or something.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, where is he not? Like, just when you think you get rid of prime ministers, I think Trudeau's gone. I feel like he's going on vacation for the rest of his life. He's going to surf or something. I don't know. Yeah. I could be just reading into his stereotypes, but I feel like the other ones you never really get rid of. They haunt us in the backgrounds, the private sector.
Stephen Harper, I think, is pretty prolific. Like, he's done, he was very involved. I think when you see them being super involved in the United States Capitol side, they are Justin Trudeau never went to a Bilderberg meeting. I say Bilderberg because it really is the most quintessential meeting of American capital, right? I think 80% of the people on their steering committee are military contractors, and they're all part of Peter Thiel's on there, Alex Karp, and the CEO of Google, and the head of the WEF. We're talking about some really big players, right? And so if I think when you see those people, that's why Stephen Harper is still so around, because he's so invested in capitalism. He's entrenched in that American capitalism, oligarchy, CIA. It's all the same, right? The head of the CIA goes to Bilderberg every year, anyways, it is these people are all connected, and it's really not hard to see how they're connected. But yes, I don't think Stephen Harper is ever going away until he dies, to be honest.
He's running the IDU, which is a think tank for right-wing political parties to work together on ideas. Yeah.
Oh, gross. Oh God, I need to know what progressives are in that. I mean, not right now, but that isn't even the one I'm talking about. I'm telling you, that man is everywhere. I'll dig it up for next week. Maybe we'll have a
Yeah.
little Stephen Harper shit fest because he's working his way back into our lives. Is having to watch Chrétien too at the labor
Oh,
leadership.
oh my
I
God.
screen recorded some of that. That was some heavy nationalist shit. For those who think that only conservatives do that, I mean, the NDP doesn't want to be outdone. They do it as well. But before we move on, I mean, if you got more to talk about the election, we can. But one thing I definitely want to mention that, you know, might not hit most people's radar is that okay, I'm going to answer this viewer's question later, so I'm gonna highlight it so we can all ponder it. But the NDP are up to their usual shenanigans in terms of like selecting candidates. I think like if you're in Ontario, what's going to come to mind is Sarah Jama, and this isn't the same thing, but you know those who have been within the NDP know exactly what I'm talking about. You know, they're cherry picking candidates and they're sidelining vocal activists. The most progressive choices are not the ones that are going to win candidates nominations. So in Oshawa, of all places, where you might have a fighting chance to get a seat, you would think, they've gone and done it again. And you know, they told their story somewhat publicly, but I'm not going to name drop them here. But just know that they're a longtime stalwart. They've actually worked as a staffer for MPPs and have been involved in their riding, school trustee, and they just sidelined the process altogether. So I know there's probably folks out there. I mean, even my neighbor walked down the street and said he knew a student that he went to school with was approached by the NDP to run. And I warned them. I said, you make sure they know that they're coming in with like absolutely no resources at all, with zero supports and whatnot. So and then I see in the comments here, you know, Matt, welcome, Matt. He says, is there a party we can support? Because before we started live, you know, Ashley's going on about Kearney, right? And I was like, well, what's the feedback you're getting, right? And the feedback's like, you're just trying to get Pierre to win. And like, that's the farthest thing from Ashley's mind. But however, we also know the NDP are garbage for many, many reasons. Like I have a whole podcast playlist. I don't know, it's like up to 15 episodes on what goes on in that party and why you probably don't want to spend your energy there either. And so it's like, I'm like, Ashley, we don't have an answer for people right now. And like it for this month, in terms of who to support or who to vote for. I really don't. Do you folks want to chime in there and see if you can answer Matt's question? Can you see it? Yeah, you can see it.
Yeah, I can see it. I mean, mine was literally what I was saying before, like for quite a while now. We've been literally picking the worst, and it's the only thing we ever presented. And I'm not sure if we would. I think we've been conditioned this way for so long right now. Even the best choice would never be sort of an option because we're so conditioned that the best choice isn't ever going to happen. And so
isn't going to win, you mean?
Sorry?
Isn't going to win?
Is never going to win, and it's because we're just so conditioned to the fact that no, we need to have bad choices. A good choice is an unrealistic thing. I mean, it's hell. Let's look at the, like even the Ontario provincial election. We knew Ford is a terrible choice. We've been shown Ford is a terrible choice, but we could not be bothered to make a change on that one. Why? Why could we not do that?
Yeah, I don't know. I think like, first of all, nobody really has a platform out anyway. So it's like, it's hard to know what anybody's standing on at this point. But yeah, I don't know what the answer is, to be honest. It's like personally, I feel like there is no good option and that our system itself is meant so that there are never any good options. The option is always going to be in the interest of capital. But if you want to vote and you want to vote for the best options, I think you kind of have to wait until all the platforms are out and decide if any are viable and any are worth supporting. But I don't know that that's the best answer, but that's what I would do, you know?
I see a lot of people suggesting the Greens um, as an alternative, and I mean, we interviewed Dimitri Lascaris and all the shenanigans that went on around him running for leadership, and we saw something similar happen after he was even gone. But the Ontario Greens had a pretty good platform, but then as soon as Ashley's like, "Oh, nobody has a platform," I felt like writing like, I don't give a fuck what their platform is. I can't trust any of them. I've seen their platforms. Like Justin said, he'd clean up all the water. You know what I mean? He'd lift all the boil water advisories, and like now we're just supposed to give him credit because he did more than his share of his predecessors. But he didn't keep his promise. The electoral reform. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, and he's not the only example. They're all. To be honest, you know what sucks though is sometimes the fucking conservatives are the ones that keep their promises. They're the ones we don't want them to keep, right? Where they're like, we're gonna axe this tax, and we're like, or they're talking about getting rid of the child tax benefit, and it's just like, no, or well, they're all talking about raising the retirement age, and it's like, well, they'll probably keep those really bad promises. And Trump, I mean, they don't keep the lofty ones, right? They don't keep the ones that are like, I'm going to make life better for you, the rhetorical ones, right? We're going to go after the big guys. But when they give like specific policies, and they scare us, I feel like they do hold that fucking line, and maybe that has to do with why they win. That's what I fear about Trump is his supporters, although it's all ick. I mean, they all knew it would be ick. They can actually go back and fucking say, like, did your presidential pick do what he said he would do either? Like, did he make eggs cheaper? No, but he did do these other things. They're all horrible. They're all horrible things. But they're there. They're like, you see? And we don't have, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, like, the because like anything that the conservatives do is going to move the spectrum to the right. They're going to be doing right wing, and that's always in the interest of capital. So it's easy to do those things, right? Like you very easy because you're not fighting an uphill battle against the people who are funding you, the people who are investing in all of your, all your own private investments, right? Like, so it's easy for them to do that. Whereas like when people promise anything to move like towards social equity or anything to the left, like that's a much bigger barrier. So that's, I think, I mean, the Liberals, their purpose has always been to never allow the political spectrum of the country to move back towards the left. It's always to be moved towards the right. The conservatives move it to the right, and then, or the Overton window, or whatever you want to call it. And then the Liberals come in and they make sure that it never moves back to the left. That's been like their Democrats and Liberals alike. That's kind of their whole thing. So that's why we always are shifting to the right, never to the left. And until you have like a populist leader, right? Like somebody really populist who's like running on like a truly leftist platform, you'll never see any kind of change. There'll never be any change never any movement towards the left. It'll always be towards the right. So that's why
So what I can offer folks that, we are going into an election, it's going to absorb at least some mental energy. You could spend it there. It's a unique platform, a unique time where people are talking about politics a little more openly. So get out there with a cause that is trying to push their way into the platform, into the talking points of the leaders, right? So my first thought comes to votepalestine.ca. I think that's the website. I'm just, again, on a little laptop, so I can't really look it up now that I don't have it with me, but there's good folks that have been organizing for Palestine this whole time, and now they have put some resources towards creating mobilization, anyway, around the election, right? Pushing for candidates to take a position, identifying folks based on that position. I'm sure they're going to use a lot of the usual tricks to try to push that issue up. Disability justice advocates are going to have an uphill battle as well. So I would suggest, like, if you feel like you need something to support during the election period, do that. Be politically active in that way, because to be honest, I mean, you can help a local candidate if you think they've got the stuff, and they're deserving of your volunteer time, and they're going to use their platform like you would, perhaps, like that is totally valid. I think just like trying to tie your hopes into, finding a party to solve the problem when we know like the system is the problem, like that's okay that you don't have a political home in the bourgeoisie political system. It wasn't built for us anyway, to be honest. So like folks who want to navigate that are navigating that to the best of their ability, but it's been fruitless, fucking fruitless. All right. So I would just say focus on keeping organizing in the disruptive ways that we are, and building power, and then building support systems for when the system does fucking crumble. And we have to take care of each other. I did a lunch and learn. This is so side stream, but I did a lunch and learn on the theory of hospicing the modernity. And I'm not going to go all over it again, but the idea of modernity kind of being just capitalism, a euphemism for capitalism. So I don't really have to explain like the complexities of it, but and that we kind of have to give it hospice care because we want it to crumble and die, but delicately so that people don't die with it, right? Because turbulent times bring about higher need for support. So we're hospicing it, not because we love it, but because it's going to be dangerous and uncomfortable and whatnot. But also providing prenatal care to what will be born from it. So doing it in a way that it starts to create an alternative, right? So we take care of each other in a way. We build our organizations in a way that we would like to see the future, right? Without mimicking the colonial system at all, right? A complete breakaway. So then I feel like when you understand that, it takes the pressure off of, elections that feel like the be all end all of everything. Because they're built up that way. And they can feel that way. I mean, especially when you see what Trump is doing, it's like, oh gosh, if that happened to us, like, we would be horrified. But it's a long game still, people, right? Like, it's so, yeah, don't stress because all the parties are shit. Let that just reaffirm you that, like, most things are beyond reform, right? And that's uncomfortable and it's kind of scary sometimes, but that's the reality, that a lot of things are beyond reform. So, yeah, let's move on from the Canadian election a little bit, because I'm sure we're going to have to talk about that every week until then. So that was just your opening taste. Any predictions before we move on, though? Because I don't think we were calling for the Liberals to be at the top of the polls when the plug was pulled. So I would have lost money if I had bet a few months ago. Anybody? I mean, I won't hold you to it, but I will archive this footage.
I would put money on it that Mark Carney will win. I have no doubts that he will.
A majority or minority? Can we?
Majority. He's got so much money behind him, like so much money. So I think, and like I said, and he's got American influence. He's got the CIA. I mean, he's been well established in the CIA machine as well. So he's got a lot of people behind him that are going to want him to win. So that is my prediction. And I think when I first started talking about Carney, I think last June, maybe, when his name was first coming around. And then, and ever since then, I was like, oh, he's going to win. He's going to win the Liberal nomination. He's going to win. And now with the polls and stuff, you see, like, he's just like skyrocketed. And I think, like, if you spend any time on Facebook, which is a cesspool, but if you spend any time on Facebook and like in real life friends, right? Like just seeing like people, how they react to Carney, I think there's no question that he's going to win. Yeah.
I interact with a lot of people every day and absolutely, like the acceptance of Carney is without question. They love Carney. As I said, his messaging was strong. He did everything correct to get the popular, to get people to get behind him. He came out the gate on on the Daily Show with a very strong, it's it's not you, it's me kind of language, trying to break up with the United States, which resonated to every again, it's hitting the right points to hit the right emotions in everybody. You're also right. I would definitely put him into into the win. I don't want to fully call it just because it's 3 out of 4 weeks. And
Yes.
literally, and literally anything can happen in 3 or 4 weeks in this. I mean, we've seen, hell, was it, no, don't forget, the last week of, I believe it was the 2011 election when Jack Layton won the opposition. Nobody predicted it. And it happened within the changes occurred in the last week that just caused it to kick in.
The NDP is not winning shit here. I don't care what happens in 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be really scary for them.
Just going to say that could be a phrase you just said that's going to haunt you in a couple of weeks. And I'm not saying it's going to completely change something, but I'm just saying crazy shit's happened before in the past.
There were actually 2 stories I should have bookmarked for here. I'm going to just save one, but one is that, like, rumor has it that the Liberals are going after really high-end candidate material from the Conservatives and from the NDP. So it's apparently set to announce this week. The Hill Times reported that a sitting incumbent, provincial NDP will drop their seat and run for the federal Liberals.
Wow.
And that they've approached really high ranking Conservatives as well. So, where we had rumors of Elizabeth May heading some sort of talks on Liberals and NDP and Greens all kind of working together in the French kind of manner of candidate selection, running candidates in seats that they're most likely to win and letting the other ones go to their progressive opponents. That seems to have not really borne anything as of yet, but the Liberals are kind of trying to get ahead of that, and they're like, we'll just take some of your best candidates. You won't know the difference. You won't know who we are. We'll look like Conservatives to some people, and we'll look like the most bleeding heart Liberals to others, and that is enough to secure everybody most votes. Yeah, I think, Joe, you're right, and Ashley. But let's should we do our Trump dump? Let's do our Trump dump. I mean, we talked about him. Let's just get it out of the way. Yeah. Joe, you had a piece there, and I saw you put up a TikTok as well. We actually had 2 really ones where I was just like shaking my head going, are you serious? So you want to share one of those, or, share what you got there?
I'll share this one here in regards to, it's a part of a collection to a bunch of the stories. And give me a second here as I also get the share going. Poof. Oh, and poof. So, not the subscription thing, obviously. So this is sort of the ending of the the story here. But as many people are aware, a lot of really, really crazy things have been going on in the States. Shocker, I know. But particularly in regards to people going into the country right now, and just a reaction to some of the events. As many people know, there's a lady in BC who was arrested and then sent to ICE. She was arrested because there was an issue in regards to her visa, and it was a minor issue. And usually, what they do is just deny entry and then send the person on their way to go address a visa issue, and that's it. In this particular case, they arrested her and sent her to ICE, to which, the international community is like, why would you arrest somebody for an issue of visa? You deny entry and that's it. And this is not the only case. There was another person from England, a backpacker, who also got sent to ICE, as well as another individual. I can't remember which country they were from. They were arrested. They were stripped. They were prevented from sleeping. Like, we're talking some hardcore.
They were like chained together, right?
For the one for the Canadian, they were chained together. Like, this is absolutely harsh conditions for, again, an error on your visa. Like, which is absolutely insane. So since then, Germany and Britain have both added travel warnings for anybody going to the U.S., saying, like, be careful going to the U.S. And we're expecting to see some other countries starting to do the same thing because, again, you can't possibly think it's safe for anybody to go to the U.S. right now. Like I've talked to people, and I know a couple of people where they're like just scratching their heads and going, "I've got this friend who's going to the States, and I don't know how to express to them, don't go to the States." And they've said those articles. They also said the articles, like I said, about travel warnings, what happened to the individuals,
And they
as
are
well as
denying
Mhm.
entry to folks. So, like, even if you don't get detained, if you
Yeah,
have travel plans, there's folks. So they're checking cell phones, and that's kind of
absolutely.
this isn't
Yeah,
just under Trump because my family will tell you, I'm like I won't travel to the U.S. for a long time for many reasons, but I
yeah.
also feel like um because I say things like I call for revolution and bringing down the system and lots of other things.
Oh,
Um, I
we
feel
can't.
like it, yeah,
Yeah,
they would be searching my phone and be like, forget it. And that is happening. So anti-Trump posts now
yeah.
are enough for border control to just say,
Did the
turn
video
you
on that one
back and your
too?
whole vacation is busted. So just like,
Yeah.
don't do it.
March
I
9th. Yeah,
Ashley
March
was like,
9th was
who is even
a
traveling, right? Like,
yeah, March 9th was a French scientist that tried to go to the United States, got there, and the border guards searched their phone, and they found messages criticizing Trump. And their exact words, sorry, well, the words that they were quoted as saying is that this messaging is equivalent to terrorism, is what the border security said. They even started a file with the FBI that the FBI closed, but it's like criticizing Trump is equivalent to terrorism now, is what these border guards are saying. Like you, like freedom of speech, except
Yeah.
for criticism of Trump. So
It's always interesting to me because like from the beginning of like the genocide in Gaza and in Palestine, the people have been saying like what happens in Palestine happens eventually domestically, right? And like the Israelis have been doing that for forever to Palestinians,
Mhm.
going through their phones and stuff, detaining them for no reason, not allowing them entry. And I think it's just like these slow progressive movements of like imposing what they are testing out, what the capitalist regime or the American regime, whatever you want to call it, is um had been doing in Israel as like their ground zero, and now bringing it in domestically, and it'll just get worse from here. But I did see that apparently the amount of Canadians going to the United States is as low as it was during the height of the pandemic. So I mean, there's that at
Yeah.
least when the borders were closed. So quite literally, no one is going anymore to the United States.
It's. I think they said they dropped like over 50% now.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
going to decimate their tourism industry,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
which is not a terrible thing.
Well, you know.
no, but it's like with all I don't have a perfect solution, but all of these solutions typically just hurt poor folks too, right? Like most
Mhm.
rich people will weather the storm of a bad tourist season, right? Like they've got floating money and whatnot, but there'll be layoffs, right? And it'll be those layoffs are happening under a system, a social security net that's being stripped from them at the same time. So, and if that happens en masse and it's because of they're able to frame it because something we did, it just kind of creates conditions we've seen before. Like
Yeah.
the scarier it gets with these kinds of options, it just helps breed fascism.
Well,
um
this is one of the reasons why I've been focusing a lot in regards to articles and whatnot in regards to the states and how it's treating other people in other countries. I I'm very very uh, concerned in regards to how the states is viewing us and changing the view of Canada as well as other countries, like but more specifically Canada, Mexico, and Greenland.
oh
I
yeah.
we see how they're right now talking about us, but we're also seeing the language become um, very different in regards to saying that we are the problem. And they're constantly repeating it, not only from the government themselves, but also their news media, their news agencies. And the more they do this, the more they're selling this idea that we are the problem to the people and to the politicians and to the businesses, so that if they do want to do anything aggressive that's beyond just the tariffs, they'll have the support of the people because they've convinced them that we are the animals that need to be addressed.
And he's setting up the framework for that legally, right? He
Hmm.
has he's looking at fentanyl and kind of classifying it as a weapon,
Yep.
of mass destruction. And the Venezuelan prisoners that were sent back by the hundreds despite a court order. Despite a court order, despite a court order. I don't know how many times I've tweeted that out this week and last week because, a lot of folks have the argument that there is a judicial branch of government. I mean, there is. That's not an argument. That it exists, but how effective it is against Trump and his lack of care, right? Like he just defies them, and the lack of real consequences there seems to be is just unreal. But yeah, he's framing those Venezuelans as terrorists. So that will allow him to interfere in Venezuela again and again, and again. Like they don't need more reasons. Usually they can just go based on the previous demonization that they've set, a la Cuba. But yeah, he's really kind of laying legal framework, why he would need legal framework. There's no fucking international law anymore anyway. So, but he is doing quite well. How much the American public will swallow, we don't know. I mean, half of them voted for them. And, I said that last week. I think just one of those things, if you just keep repeating it, over and over again, and you don't give a whole lot of space for any alternative views, shutting press out. And we see Polyev setting that up, right? No press are really allowed to fly with him on the campaign. He's really, I imagine we're not going to see them at debates again. And they're not going to really answer questions. He's already been cherry picking press, even for press conferences not during an election time. So expect that to continue. That's a real Trump maneuver as well, right? Like, I'm only going to speak to the media who will regurgitate my shit, who will change the names of everything, like Washington. Washington, D.C. and the Gulf of America, like you can't, you just repeat it, it just becomes all people know, right?
Yeah.
You read 1984?
About the Greenland, Mexico, United States, Greenland, and Canada. That is like the technate state. So that's like technocracy, which is like so Elon Musk's grandfather was actually like the president of technocracy in Canada from like 1930 until he left to go participate in apartheid after the Second World War. He moved to South Africa. Yeah. But his grandfather, so it's a deeply entrenched ideology, but they believe the technate state is essentially this one North American landmass. And so that's like a firm belief by the people in the upper echelons of the Trump administration that they would like to have a technate state that's overseen by these technical overlords. And essentially they believe that people who are technical experts should be running the country and not, elected officials. But, when you have people like Peter Thiel, who's an absolute psychopath, someone like that running the country, you end up with these deranged opinions and deranged ideologies being rolled out, and then people just buying into them thinking that they're supporting something good, but it's not. It's all about just absolute control. That's what they want. Overall control.
Joe, you had another story for the Trump dump this week that on segregated facilities. Like, some people are kind of like, oh, well, it's just a technicality, but like, what is the point behind that? Like, what is the end goal here?
This one's even more bizarre and twisted. Let me see if I can pull this one up. Where did I put it?
I know, because I think I deleted your link by accident. It had my link in your spot for this story.
How dare they? Hang on
you can load up your TikTok. You had it up there.
I did, and I've got it right here. So this one came out. This week also. So this was the second story also in regards to, if you weren't already uncomfortable going to the States, imagine being in the States. And that actually applies very well. So this is a move that the Trump administration has done in regards to the federal contracts. Now, federal contracts have stipulations in regards to they're looking for the services, but they also have all these requirements that are just standard across all the contracts. One of these standards requirements was a ban on segregated facilities. Now, segregated facilities was, as the sign shows, and these were contractors are prohibited from contractors are prohibited from having segregated restaurants, waiting rooms, and drinking fountains. Jim Crow era. And now they've removed it altogether, which now that doesn't mean that segregation is legal. This is just it's removed from the contracts. And it's more of a signal like, yeah, you know what? We're okay with it now. And a lot of legal experts right now in the States are going, what the hell? This is a terrible sign. Especially since we've seen, they've already done a fair amount of rollbacks in regards to women's rights when it comes to Roe versus Wade, trans rights in many of the states, LGBTQ rights. They're working on, in 9 states, they're working on rolling back the right of civil unions and marriages between gay couples. And this year tracks within it in regards to continuing. And again, this has only been 3 goddamn months, and we're already going back to the fact that segregation is not back on the table now.
They did something that was kind of funny but not funny, one of those things that they've done that backfired and makes them look as stupid as they are, but also has consequences, is like trying to remove DEI, but also any reference to DEI or diversity and so a lot of documents are being purged. And the one example that was sort of humorous but not, it was like basically just a search and find for the word gay and remove it. And what that resulted in, like, all these documents were flagged to be deleted, and AP released them so folks could get their hands on them, and they go over them and they're like scratching their head going, why these documents? And the common factor is some key words, but like the plane that dropped the atomic bomb, the Enola Gay.
Enola Gay. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, they were going to remove all reference to that. Also, there's a Major Gay, or, there's probably a lot of people with the last name Gay or maybe first name Gay, or somehow in their file that they were gay, actual references to LGBTQ people, but just to search, find, and delete kind of en masse. But also, I read yesterday that they are removing any reference to Navajo windtalkers and them cracking codes during the war, which, saved a lot of American lives, or whatever, how they like to frame this. But, and they'll just be referred to as American soldiers. And I don't think any of these Navajo warriors, who are likely not around anymore, I'm not quite sure, would all consider themselves American, right? They're from the Navajo Nation. But anyway, that's for them to decide. But that's like just complete erasure of these things to make it all one homogenous. It's like he's following 1984's playbook. I mean, the records department has these tubes, and they are just, things are just like, that didn't happen. That never happened. Russia's always been our buddy. Just forget about it. Fuck Europe. We've always hated Europe. Don't you remember that? And yeah.
The only thing that I've been working, I've been changing my language in regards to is, it's not him. He's not bright enough for this plan that's going on right now. It's not him. And I feel it's important for people to know this. This is a lot to do with Project 2025. We all know what the Project 2025 is. It's been published. Everybody can go see it. He didn't write this. This is a very complex plan. The man can't do anything complex. He can't even run a goddamn casino where people walk in and just give you money. And somehow he made that go bankrupt. So it is not him doing this plan. Yeah, casino is supposed to always win. How you mess that up? Who knows? But he did. This is why this plan is complex. It's cruel, and it's being executed at breakneck speed. And a lot of people are like, "Well, why is it going so fast?" Because they have 2 years to do this. Because they know that they're probably going to lose either the House or the Senate in 2 years. They usually do. And so they're going to try to do as much as they can and as quickly as they can to make sure they can secure it and have a chance to continue having both and then continue their power. But to be this organized and do it this quick, it's not him. It's a group of people behind him, and it's most important to know that should anything occur to him, Vance will probably take his place, and the plan won't change. They'll swap out whoever's in front, but the plan will continue.
Yeah.
I have a hard time believing that if the Democrats took power that they would roll all of it back either. You know, there's some things they definitely would perhaps do different in order to save their base. But even then, I think like they're almost decimated. He seems to, it's almost like the NDP in Canada. Like they're doing speaking tours around the United States and trying to get people fired up for Bernie and AOC in stadiums. What's the name of the guy who ran for vice president along with Tim Katz? Tim Katz?
Tim Walz.
Waltz, thank you. Thank you. He did have one banger though, and I shared it with my partner because it was like, if you need a pick me up, you know, and you have an iPhone, they make it really easy. You could have like the little ticker at the bottom of your phone and just put it on the Tesla stock. Like that's it. Just have a notification to your phone every time the Tesla stock drops. And I thought, oh, that's, you know, he's having fun with this tour, but I thought I'd share that. That was actually, that's all I've got this week is my activist tip. Yeah. You need small joy in your life.
Yeah. Talking about Project 2025, so it was like developed by the Heritage Foundation, and I saw something hilarious a couple weeks ago. So every once in a while, I honestly believe it's important to watch or to at least what do you call it? Maybe not watch, but like to just visualize what the right is saying. So every once in a while, I will watch Tucker Carlson. And it's not because I like Tucker Carlson or think he's a good interviewer or anything like that, but I'm very curious to know because he is a mouthpiece for Donald Trump. And he's a mouthpiece, most importantly, for the Heritage Foundation, who rolled out Project 2025. And he had on a guy who was talking about like how the CIA is involved in everything and how they've overthrown so many governments, like really like unusual stuff for Tucker Carlson to be saying. But the whole episode was sponsored by the Heritage Foundation. And the Heritage Foundation, yeah, it was. And the Heritage Foundation is an arm of the CIA.
They don't even try to hide it. They pull ad space. Why the fuck would they ever need ad space anyway? Like as if the people coming to them for clients are picking them from the back of the yellow pages or because they had an ad on Tucker Carlson. Like they don't need PR.
Wild. Yeah, the whole episode. And I was like, and the whole thing was like Tucker Carlson being like, I didn't know the CIA was involved in that. Like his dad was CIA. Of course, Tucker Carlson knows about this stuff. But then again, the Heritage Foundation itself is a CIA asset. Like the guy who was in charge of the Heritage Foundation is now in charge of the CIA. Like these people are the same people. And I thought it was just so hilarious because at the end of the day, the people who are in charge have always been the same people. It's the CIA. And I think people think that the CIA is like, you know, government officials, but the CIA is not. CIA's only purpose is to protect American capital. That is the only purpose of it. That is what they talk about, American interests. They talk about that's American corporations, American capital, and American wealth and power. That's all they care about. They do not care about people or civilians or the people who live in the United States. And so those are actually the people who are in power. So it's and they will never change, even though Donald Trump has been supposedly defunding the CIA. I think he's just removing the people who he feels don't align with his current goals and filling those positions with people who do, which was a priority for Project 2025. Fill your government ranks with people who are going to support you. Yeah, 100%, which is exactly what he's doing. They are removing people who do not align, which is why you've seen like Elon Musk like firing all those people, and then all of a sudden they're rehiring people, right? Because they're picking and choosing the people who are going to align with their mandate, with their administration. So, but yeah.
Even if they didn't already, it's like a benevolence thing too, right? Like, oh, I got my job back and I've got to toe the line, or I'll be like those 100%. Other folks that were laid off, and like the message is clear. But let's move on to our other headlines, if you don't mind, just because, yeah, it's been a bit. And sorry, I'm just a little bit frazzle-dazzled here. We're going to talk about Gaza. I mean, again, it's not great news, and I'm sure you've heard it, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on it except for, what you can perhaps do about it. But because it can be quite daunting, and I know it's filling your feeds as well. But obviously the ceasefire has ended. It was never really fully in effect, right? We know Israel had enacted violence, not just on Gaza during the ceasefire, not to the extent that we saw the other day, where 400 people were killed, almost half of them children. in one day. It was one of the worst days since the onset of this particular stage of the genocide against Palestinians, but also violence has continued in the West Bank. During the entire ceasefire, it's actually severely escalated. Displacement, demolition, and violence, detentions in the West Bank. So just yesterday, Gada Sasa let us know that in her family's village, which is in the West Bank, just south of Nablus, it was under siege by at least 100 Israeli soldiers who detained people, including children. And they've also completely displaced. I think it was like 95% of the population at the largest refugee camp in the West Bank has completely been emptied, and much of it demolished. So, my favorite part is the statement that comes out from our, what do we call her? Foreign Minister, or Minister of Foreign Affairs, Melanie Joly. Another weak sauce statement. Like, I don't know. Do they not feel the futility in those statements when they make them? Like, do you actually give a fuck? Because if you did, you would just be sick to make one of those statements again. But, Joe, can you pull up the link that I've put beside the Gaza article there? This is a tweet from Senator Wu. It's not just a tweet. There's a statement attached where many senators, Canadian senators, have signed just to react to Joly's statement, to say it absolutely is not enough of a statement. And we talked about last week about Mark Carney appointing Marco Mendocino to his Secretary of State, or Chief of Staff, which is a very influential position within the Prime Minister's office. And Carney's statement was, again, a little, thoughts and prayers. But folks know that we are continuing, Canada, to trade arms with Israel, not to mention continuing to legitimize them through all different sorts of ways, right? So this is still a continual call. I know folks are really kind of burned out, but the federal election, again, is a time to kind of come around and make a big deal about it again, continue to. And the actions continue as well. So you can plug in with folks like World Beyond War or the Palestinian Youth Movement. I normally save these for the disruptive updates, but, this Saturday is going to be a big day of action. I mean, today you can go to, if you're in Toronto, I believe they're at Yonge and Dundas, but let me just double check. There's an action today at 5:30. There'll also be a day of action in most cities tomorrow as well. I mean, like Barrie, Mississauga, Edmonton, Halifax, the usual suspects, right? The big urban centers, obviously. But I'm telling you, folks, if you look around, you're going to find smaller actions in smaller towns, and like more and more folks are organizing locally towards this. So you should be able to find something there. But the idea is to target the arms trade, because Canada absolutely does play a role in this. We can't just be sending out statements and pretending it's like just the Israelis and the Americans doing this. So other updates from Gaza also, they're awful, but they had pulled back troops from the kind of crossing that's been created right through between the north and south of Gaza. They have reoccupied that space with ground troops. They have dropped leaflets again in horrible, like to see the translations of these leaflets being dropped on the people in southern Gaza, telling them obviously to evacuate fucking to nowhere, and saying they are carrying through with Trump's compulsory plan. So Netanyahu's going to get off just trying to blame this on Trump all of a sudden, like it's not something he's been salivating to do to begin with. But yeah, and just we released an episode this week talking to 2 Israeli youth who had refused service in the IDF. There's conscription in Israel, and so when you turn a certain age, you're given a notice to enlist, and these folks show up and they refuse, and they're, put through this cycle of being arrested, putting in jail, and then released, asked to enlist again, denied, jail. And like they could keep doing this. They kind of just torment these folks. But the one thing I pulled out of that discussion, not one thing, but the one thing that really stuck with me is like I asked Tal, you know, what he thought, where the solution would come from, you know, and he said there's no way Israel will get to a point where they believe Palestinians deserve life and liberty, like where they are equal and deserving of liberation. They'll get to a point where their lives are so miserable, they'll see only the solution is to end the occupation. You know, they won't be able to travel to Europe. They will have assets frozen. You know, they'll be living under sanctions, whatever the pressures are, that those will become so unbearable that then they'll concede that they have to end the occupation, but it still won't be with the understanding that Palestinians deserve life and liberty. So those conditions were unacceptable to me. I mean, that's what he said, but that just kind of, I don't know, reinforced the idea that when you were talking about the arms trade, it's not just a pressure on Israel. This isn't just a sanction or a punishment. It's quite literally to disarm the imperialists. Right? It's to weaken that military so the Palestinian resistance can win. And I don't want to concede that point to anybody. It's not so that it comes to some sort of agreement where Israel has decided to just not kill Palestinians anymore. The whole idea is to end the occupation. So, yeah, it wasn't like the update we want to give on Gaza. It's fucking horrific to have these images again, and to imagine these people have lived through all this, and you know, what were we at, 58 days, 59 days of peace or something, or you know, not constant bombardment, and now again, you know, they're bombing tents. So yeah, just it's absolute, you know, all hands on deck still. Make sure you follow us on Instagram as well, because I put up actions and ways to get involved with the Palestinian Solidarity Movement constantly. There's like something every day, especially if you're in the GTA. There's something every day that you can plug into. Anybody want to comment on that? I kind of took up all that space. Sorry.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised. So, I mean, as horrified as I was in regards to the images coming out for Gaza and the fact that they broke ceasefire, I'm also, we called it. Like, we knew that was going to happen. So it's annoying in regards to that. It's I don't even know how to describe the emotion of, you know, still horrified by the images, but not surprised at the same time. It's just one of those like, yep.
Yeah.
And just struggling with that, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely impacted my fucking mood, you know, like it's just like, here we go again, you know,
Makes
and
you sweary.
yeah, not that the job was ever done, but
Yeah.
it did kind of make me sweary this week. But yeah, it's just it's hard to give those updates, honestly, because you want something more concrete to plug folks into. But either way, I'm going to move on to another headline. This one, again, I've given a few examples, and there was an example in my notes. I'm not seeing it now, but I think last week we gave an example of some drag queens were awarded in a lawsuit for defamation, right, of all the shit people are printing. And the Toronto Sun actually lost a ruling this week in the courts. They had called Palestinian solidarity activists in the street Nazis. And the CJPME, they got some sort of ruling. My apologies for not having the details right now. I'm just not seeing it in my notes anymore. But we often talk about using that as a tool, right? Defamation against the movement, or, you know, folks online can be prolific in labeling folks and trying to criminalize and demonize us and whatnot. But we've also seen it go the other way, right? In the most extreme case, we see Eve Engler getting arrested and criminally charged for calling someone a fascist online. There we go. That's the Toronto Sun. So that like this sends a message to Canadian media that they just can't simply print anything they want about Palestinian solidarity activists. And they have been getting away with a lot of it, right? Another claim is like they're all, I mean, not all, I don't even want to say that, right? But, you know, one of the labels is a terrorist supporter. But lots of shit, right? And if you can't back it up, you can't print it. And so folks are using the courts in this way, but it's also being used against us. Can you pull up the BBC article on Greenpeace? So Greenpeace has been ordered to pay, and this is like, they will appeal this, and they are actually launching a countersuit in a different country to kind of recoup this, which is kind of fucked up. I don't really understand how that works legally, but Greenpeace has been ordered to pay $600 million to an oil firm, so for defaming them. Yeah, and this is like a decade in the making, this court ruling. So they ruled that Greenpeace was behind an unlawful and violent scheme to cause financial harm to Energy Transfer. And that's significant because quite often we openly declare some campaigns are to cause financial damage. Look at the Tesla takedown, right? So are we going to see this trend moving forward? And like the article that Joe is sharing there from the BBC says it's likely we are. It's likely that there's been a few companies, especially in the energy sector, that have been waiting for this ruling to launch their own lawsuits, right? We say the most horrible thing about big oil and gas, right? They're murdering the planet. They don't care. Like, awful but true things. And that is opening up folks to a lawsuit. So Greenpeace is talking about like they might be forced into bankruptcy because of this. After 50 years in the game, making what they've accomplished is hard to measure, honestly, because the environmental movement hasn't really accomplished a fucking thing, and that's not to their fault. It's just, I don't know how devastating it would actually be to lose Greenpeace, because I think we have to repurpose some of the nonprofits that we have and put them towards the path that we know is more fruitful. So that actually might be a blessing, but not for that oil company to be getting $6 million of environmentalist donations. That's gotta really...
Well, the UK has a very long history of hating environmentalists, so I'm not surprised at all. I think there's at least 2 or 3 environmentalist activists, like Just Stop Oil activists, that are in prison, who are sentenced to like 5 years in jail for like blocking a highway. So the UK,
this was in North Dakota.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I thought
this ruling, but you nothing. Oh. That does not make anything you said invalid. Yeah, that's all true.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, but I think like UK has been really moving towards really quickly towards fascism, and I think the US is just kind of like, I mean, they're all. I think I saw an article too today saying that like the king, what's his name? King, the ugly one, King.
Charles?
What's his name? The King of England right now. Why can't I remember his name?
King Charles.
Yeah.
I'm like purposely not saying it. I'm like, what is she gonna call him? Just come up with a better name then.
King Charles is like gonna come to the United States to meet with Donald Trump. Like apparently that's like a thing that's happening, and like they're like all on the same team, friends. So
that sounds like a fun action to plan. Where are they gonna be? Anyone know?
Yeah.
Someone will figure that out.
Yeah.
But okay, my least favorite part of this article, though, and this story with Greenpeace is not like, I imagine they mounted a compelling argument, not so compelling that they fucking lost, but most of their argument was that it wasn't us, it was the indigenous people. We were just helping them train for nonviolent protests. We didn't organize this. It was the Standing Rock Sioux that organized it. And I was like, oh yeah. So I'm again not. As a kid, I wanted to be a Greenpeace pro bono lawyer for Greenpeace or Amnesty International. So like I get it. I get where people are thinking like this is devastating, and the ruling is actually devastating. But Greenpeace, come on, do fucking better than that. It should be like we have the right to attack corporations financially, but I guess legally you probably don't. NAFTA really solidified that for folks. That's a different story, though, that we don't have time for. But I thought that was significant because we do talk about movements. And so some of these headlines might not hit your feed, but they will impact the work that we talk about for sure. So maybe that should have been included in the disruptive updates, because that's where we're going. So this is a blow for Greenpeace for sure, but they aren't the only environmentalists in the game. Two big actions, or, a week of actions actually, involving youth particularly, and folks fighting for climate justice, amongst other things, obviously. The Last Generation, hopefully folks saw this. They got great press coverage. Again, I was in the lunch and learn, and someone hopped on and was like, did you see what happened? Like, the kids got great coverage, just came back from Montreal, and they did. So they spray painted a Tesla dealership in Montreal with pink spray paint, and, did their typical tactic of then standing in front of their antics and giving a speech as to why they did what they did. And a lot of the big outlets ran the whole reel, which is incredible. I mean, usually you get sound bites, right? You'll give an interview and they'll air just like 1 or 2 sentences what you had to say, and it doesn't even really make your point. But no, they got great coverage with this. And this was... They give a bunch of reasons for actually targeting Tesla, and they also managed to do this to the U.S. Embassy in Ottawa, which is incredibly embarrassing for Ottawa police or the RCMP or whoever the fuck is supposed to be guarding the U.S. Embassy, because it's covered in pink paint. Well, maybe not now.
Yeah, pink paint's been used quite a bit in some buildings around Ottawa. I remember 2 years ago there was also an activist that did it to the PMO office. They just covered it in pinkish red paint. The U.S. Embassy it's not going to be OPS. They do liaise with them, but generally security for an embassy is done by themselves, as well as sometimes attachment with the RCMP, because it's foreign soil. So it gets kind of dicey as to how you operate. But yeah, it's huge.
It is, and it's like, even in the small meeting I was in, it was with environmentalists for the most part who were, proud of these kids, but it kind of brought up that whole discussion, like, is destruction of property violence? And, the state will treat it like it is for sure, but come on, Jesus, like, where the fuck are we at?
Police is there to protect property. So violence to property in many ways, in their eyes, is worse than violence towards people.
Well, and Trump seems to think so, right? He declared like Tesla's basically off limits. That was an attack on the state. And, you can laugh at that, but it is, right? Because that's the target. That's where the anger is targeted as. So also... not related to the Last Generation action, but a dealership in Hamilton reported 80 Teslas were heavily damaged overnight. So folks are like, oh, it's insurance fraud. And, anyway, I'm just like, if you saw something, no, the fuck you didn't.
But I would be surprised if there's now possibly some actual self-vandalizing by some of these places. Because remember, Teslas are not really loved right now. So if you run a dealership, when you got the dealership, you might be like, yeah, great, I'm going to be selling these really high-end electric cars. Oh my God, this thing's just turned to hellfire because politics in the U.S. What do I do with all this? I'm stuck with an inventory, and I've got, and I can't sell any of these. Everybody hates these things. They're falling apart, and we'll get to the falling apart in a minute. What do? Hey, it's a fire sale, in the sense of it's just all on fire. And we cash out the insurance, shut down the business, and disappear.
Yeah.
I'm not saying this is what they're doing because I don't want to get sued, but it's
Teslas in the car industry have had zero resale value. Like, you can't, like, if you want to trade in your car, you cannot trade in a Tesla. Like, dealerships won't take them. They cannot sell them after they've left the lot. Like, so, and that's been like for years now. So I think your theory might be accurate in that, people, that dealerships are stuck with this inventory that they cannot unload, and that they probably see no way out of other than to just, make
The
this
value of the
disappear.
vehicle now
So,
is the scrap you can get from it. Those
right,
batteries, you can
right.
get
Maybe
a
the
fair amount of
battery.
money.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's exactly it. You can break down the vehicle down to its components, and it's scrap material, and that's pretty much what you're looking at. And you better make sure that you're going to bring that thing in soon, because that scrap material is falling off the damn Cybertruck. So this year is the other article that we were mentioning. So falling apart, absolutely. So the recall is for 46,000 trucks, a massive number. These are the ones manufactured since November 2023,
Look, it's
and they're
nearly all Cybertrucks.
nearly all Cybertrucks, like every single
Except
one.
the ones that
Amazing.
just got burnt yesterday. All but
Yeah.
80.
Exactly. Now, there's a video I saw online where somebody was actually got a Cybertruck and he was testing it out. And they were testing it out against a Ford F-150 in regards to all the different things about it, including construction was a big one. And the guy that was looking at this, he goes to the panels on on the Ford F-150. It's a standard North American vehicle, and he's pulling onto it and he's doing stuff, and it's reasonably strong. It's not going to fall apart until it gets a certain amount of pressure. He's going to the Cybertruck and he's taking off the side panels, and he's like, these things are just glued on, and I should not be able to take it off with 3 fingers. Like, this is not good. He gets to the mirror, goes to the Ford 150, tries to lift it up, doesn't move. Gets to the one, the Cybertruck, one hand breaks, and he's like, how is this legal? Like, this is not a safe vehicle to be on the road. And because the debris can fall off if you bang it the wrong way. And so, yeah, like these stainless steel trims are just falling off. Other parts of like this thing, if you slam the door closed on Tesla, and it's been shown in many videos, you slam it too hard, you can jam the door where you can't open it anymore. You can turn it into a friggin' General Lee.
The more I'm reading this, the more they had to recall more than they've sold.
Oh my God.
This man is running
Yeah.
your country, America. Like, he can't. What a fucking
Yeah.
nightmare.
I'm looking at this because this article came out today, and about yesterday, and I'm
Yeah.
looking onto the stock prices to see if like people need to be dumping this stock if they have, because I'm like, this company's about to
No,
go
they're gonna have to
bankrupt.
wait now. It depends on when they bought it. It's already fallen so much. It's like, what the fuck are you gonna do now?
So this is where it's going to be interesting, because you're right. A lot of them are going to be holding on to it just because, they're going to try to wait it out, and they're going to figure. If that changes, it's going to be because the confidence where, no, we think this company is going to go bankrupt. And if you see a large dump in regards to stocks after this, people have now signed up going, nope, it's going down. And they're just going to dump it for whatever they can do.
Yeah.
And
I
get
did
the
see
feeling-
that apparently, I saw that Netanyahu apparently asked Elon Musk to make all the vehicles, Tesla to make all the vehicles for Israeli officials. So, if we're really lucky, they'll all turn into Cybertrucks and they'll just obliterate.
Oh gosh. All right. Fuck Tesla. Keep an eye on their stock though, people, if you need a pick me up. Let's move on to the next action that youth environmentalists, folks seeking climate justice, put on this week. It was Change Course Canada. So they have a global action, but in Canada they're quite active, but on university campuses. That's mostly their focus, is to kind of get the banks off of campus. And their campaign this week centered on the 5 major banks in Canada, but specifically their investments in LNG projects. So there's 3 projects that they're demanding the banks stop funding, and that is the Prince Rupert gas transmission pipeline, the Xi Lisms, and the Coastal GasLink Phase 2. So these are obviously, they're all in the West Coast. They are all on Indigenous land. And one of the tactics is trying to really like demonize banks and take away their ability to use their influence to kind of greenwash, because a lot of folks, they'll pretend that these are necessary pipelines, that LNG is a clean alternative, but we know better now. So yeah, they launched actions right across the country, and what are the five banks? I mean, Scotia, TD, Bank of Montreal, RBC, and CIBC. But RBC is their biggest target. They are the biggest investor. Scotiabank's a second runner-up. So, I mean, pick a credit union. If you're like, well, what do I do? At some point, I have to interact with banks. Credit unions are an option, but overall, it's like, why the fuck are they on campuses? And they're not just on campuses with a teller. They're like sponsoring events, right? They're doing like financial literacy night and, Frosh Week brought to you by RBC. And like, no, these kids need to grow up knowing these are not our friends. These are not our benefactors. So follow Change Course to see more about that action. And especially if you're on campus, they're a real kind of, although they're like a youth climate justice initiative, they're mostly focused on Indigenous sovereignty, right? And taking the lead there rather than the tact normally taken. We'll just leave it at that. But yeah, so the idea of them doing those actions is for us to boost them as well, so they go beyond the campuses they took place on. So if you do see those things come across your feed, boost them up and give them a follow on social media so that the reach is a little bit farther than what they've got right now. Because, there's a lot of activists pulling off some shit across the country, getting arrested. I mean, a lot of these people will be arrested for a lot of these actions, and the news doesn't even cover it. And that can feel really defeating as an activist to take those risks and try to make a big message and then be dependent on legacy media to amplify that. So it was no wonder Last Generation got so excited over the coverage they got, because quite often they didn't. I've got comrades that have court dates coming up from an action in Montreal, and when they told me about it, and they're looking at me going, "Did you hear about it?" And I follow as many as I can, so I do know all of what's happening. And I was like, I did not hear about it, and they were just crestfallen, and I don't blame them, because yeah, you're gonna have a criminal record and all this, and did anybody even hear your message other than so if you do see that, it does matter when you repost it, boost it, comment on it. It helps their reach, and it helps them feel like it's worthwhile. And I love on the last generation one, so I went on to boost them, and I'm like, oh, they don't even need the boost today, they did a great job. But in the comments were like, how do I join? So people are seeing these more disruptive actions, these riskier actions, and thankfully the response isn't like, gasp, pearl clutch. It's like, how can I get up to this as well? And so a good organization knows how to plug those people in as seamlessly as possible, which can sometimes be the hard part, onboarding people when you don't have the resources. But yes, it is stirring, especially youth, to this form, this tactic of protesting. What was the other one? Oh yeah, so this is a good one. I'm going to the UBC strike, Joe. If you can pull up a graphic for that.
I see it.
And we warned you. we warned you. The UBC that the UBC students were not going away, even though despite the encampment being removed, that they were getting fired up and they were organizing towards a student strike, and they passed it. They had a higher turnout for this vote than they have in their normal elections. Students were fired up for this. The vote was clear. It was 70-something to 20-something. And they voted for a 2-day strike for Palestine. Right? The demands are listed on their website, but it's the usual kind of boilerplate demands from encampments. It's disclose and divest. But yeah, so I love UBC's response. The university, they never take student strikes very seriously. It's not officially condoned by the university, as if that's the point of strikes, to get your boss to agree to give you the time off. Well, that would defeat the purpose. So their statement is basically that, and that teachers need to be operating business as usual. But I don't think that's going to deflate the students much. That's an expected response from university administrations. That's the least we can expect from them, to be honest. They're awful, almost right across the board, just awful in terms of their suppression of students fighting a genocide. But UBC students, so congratulations on winning that vote and mobilizing around it. And that will be on the, I think, 24th and 25th of March. So I imagine they're not just not going to go to class. So keep an eye on, I think on Instagram, there's still like UBC encampment or UBC students. And yeah, give them a follow there so you can watch what a student strike looks like for Palestine. And I think that'll just get students fired up moving into spring when more actions are easier to plan. So yeah, I was happy to see them win that vote strike. I have, just to kind of give people a heads up, but I will bring it up again when we get closer. In May, Canada hosts every year. They host CANSEC, Canadian Security. I think that's what it's an acronym for anyway. It's just like all the worst possible villains you could think of congregate in Ottawa in convention center of some sort, type.
It's EY Center. It's
Thank you.
Yeah, Ottawa. It's in the EY Center. They have this one every year for nationals as well as local. Pretty much all the weapons manufacturers come in here to start to hawk their goods, including to Canada, but also a fair amount that go to Israel. So last year there was a large protest in regards to it. There was a particular incident, for those who might remember, of a Muslim woman who was wearing her hijab, who was slapped by a Swedish national gentleman, and Ottawa police arrested the individual and assisted him to meet the court so that he can catch his flight at 2 p.m. the next day. So it was a horrible event. There's still some information we're still trying to get from that. Because of that, there's all sorts of questions in regards to the handling of the police handling this particular case, how they treated the individual compared to the protesters. It was very, very problematic, and we're hoping to get some footage in regards to it at some point. But yeah, so this year it's coming again. It's going to be May 28th, 7 a.m. It's a Wednesday for those who want to be there. And again, the more people we can get there, the better. And again, we're expecting some more shenanigans. So we're not sure if the individual from last year is going to be there in regards to the Swedish nationalist, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I bring it up early. I know he's like, May. I usually talk 1 week ahead of time because most actions you don't have to plan for. But if you can, they're encouraging folks to travel in for this if possible. So it's May 28th, which is a Wednesday. I know that's not going to be accessible for most people. It's bright and early too. So if you are planning on going, think of your travel arrangements now. Contact Shutdown CANSEC. You can see their at stuff in Joe's sharing. I think I can't see it so small on my computer. I need glasses.
Shutdown.cansec, and that's on Instagram.
Yes, so you can get plugged into the other work that they're doing. But yeah, World Beyond War no doubt will be there, and other folks will definitely try to be there. We will try to cover that as well because it is a big event and it's becoming more and more pertinent, especially with the fighter jet contract that folks are talking about and how many American weapons manufacturers are going to be there. Oh, side note, I should have shared, Tesla was removed from the Vancouver car show, which is actually the Canadian car show. Well, I guess that maybe they all call themselves the Canadian car show, but the one in Vancouver, they just dropped Tesla for safety concerns. And Tesla hadn't adequately addressed the safety concerns. So they're just like, we're just going to axe them from the whole show. So small victories, people. We will find them wherever we can get them. Small victories. But keep that in mind. And keep watching us because we give kind of these calls to action, a little bit of lead time every week. Anybody have any actions before we go into the last segment?
Literally showed mine just now.
Oh, did I steal your thunder?
Well, I
That was
slapped
my
it in
bring
there.
forward file, and I was like, how did I get back on this page? I'm like, oh, well, share it anyway. It's there.
That's because I pasted it in there because I just came across it.
Well, I might
Yeah,
see
so
you there, Joe.
it's yeah, I'll tell you a little bit more about that after. Just information I don't want to share about myself publicly.
Signal worthy information. I got you. Don't worry.
Signal word. It's either signal or just after the stream. But yeah, no, it's going to be an interesting event. Hopefully, we get a little bit more turnout. I mean, this last year's was good. I wasn't able to get there because I wasn't told about it till after. And one of the things I was able to do was try to mobilize from here in regards to trying to get assistance in regards to legal assistance and coordinating people in regards to do jail support in regards to people being there, since there was a fair amount.
That's
But
almost
aside
a
from that,
standard now, right? Like folks are
is.
getting arrested at quite a few actions, like whether it be the point or not, or the side product. So
Yep.
yeah, hopefully you guys get a lot of mobilization around that.
There's a fair amount, and there's some people I need to reach out to because there's things we've been doing now and the things we've been seeing. Particularly, I call upon like the previous 5 arrests from different actions where the Crown is very specific in trying to put in specific conditions on people to try to how to put it? They're trying to scare people away from protesting by putting some very difficult conditions, as well as they're just cutting people out of protesting by just suspending their civil rights in regards to not allowed to protest, not allowed to go on social media talking about this issue that you're there. None of these things. And the charges they're being put on, doesn't matter what the charges are, they're trying to slap these on. The lawyers are just saying, yep, that sounds good enough. It gets my client out of jail. And it's setting a terrible precedence in regards to how to handle protesters.
It is, and that
Is-
reminds me of one more update before we go to the tip of the week. Was way back in February 2024, I had multiple guests on for an episode around like local Palestinian activism. You know, the local chapters that started up. And anyway, one of those guests was Sky Johnson, and she has a court date set up. If you don't remember the story, because the Toronto Sun kind of made sure folks didn't forget about it, but it was very early on in November, and she's been found guilty. So she taped posters to the windows of a Starbucks when it was closed. And, the cops made a big fucking deal about it. Crime scene, they shut the shop down. I mean, it taped posters that said things, I had it in my notes, like, stop the genocide. Literally didn't say anything about Jewish people at all, And, however, a lot of the Jewish lobbying groups that we know are really Israeli Zionist lobbying groups that pretend to represent the Jewish community have made it like their fucking mission to be a part of this case. That's all I'll say for now, but she does have a sentencing for taping up posters to windows.
What was she found guilty of?
Mischief.
Oh, fuck. Was she summary or was she indicted?
I don't know.
That affects the maximum.
Yeah.
I've learned so much about the law in the past year. It's unreal.
It's, yeah, and should have been unnecessary, but it's not. But yeah, so I haven't made it to any of her court dates. I'm going to try to make it to this one to cover the pressures that are put on the sentencing, because we talked about it before where like you're not charged with a hate crime. However, that word hate and hate motivation and tweets about Israel somehow work it into the fucking conversation and are weaponized against folks within the justice system. So I'm not going to speak too much more about that. We will wait until after the court date and then we'll cover it again. But that was just I hate to see when I spoke to her, she had already been charged. She had awful bail conditions. She had fucking curfew for taping posters up. So like right away they went after her, and she's a black woman, right? So we see like usually the most harshest conditions are put on Indigenous and black women. I know like we have examples where that is not always the case, but to just go after her, right? She wasn't even part of an organization or anything, just like did it because like was angry about what was happening and whatnot. And yeah, so it's we like to look at the United States as like they're fucking fascist, but we've provided so many examples here. But yeah, that's another conversation, and we're near the end. We like to keep it around 2 hours here. So let's go to the activist tip of the week. Sometimes we talk about like disruption. That's usually our activist tips are around disruption. Aaliyah Pabani gave a great session last week. I suggest folks go back to last week's Rabble rant and fast forward to the end if you can. Like it's 2 hours, obviously, but I should clip it. The tip she gives at the end about targeting, like picking targets, political targets for your campaigns and for protests. It was enlightening, and it actually opens up a greater conversation. But we've covered things like what to do when you're arrested, and kind of confrontational tips, I guess they can be seen as. But this one is also about that hospicing and prenatal care that we talk about when we're talking about bringing down systems. And it's like feeding your neighbor guerrilla style. Joe, can you run through the slides with me as I go through it? I've
Sure.
put, yeah, the tip is there, or the link is there. It's an Instagram post. This is a great account to follow. I want to also post it so that I give them credit for this. This isn't my knowledge. Well, like not all my firsthand knowledge. I am taking this from them. So the idea is not just to provide supplies, because things like Nutri-Grain bars or anything you can rally up for folks that's practical, you can always distribute as part of a street team. Other supplies like tampons, harm reduction, naloxone kits. I mean, there's a list is endless, but this particular is if, like, let's say you want to serve a home cooked meal to perhaps an encampment, or where there just be a good need for it. Now, this comes with the disclaimer that you don't just go and do this kind of without building trust or without working with a street team perhaps that already exists if you're not one. But let's say you're an organization that already has a bit of a relationship, or at least like contacts within. You could quite easily get like 3 to 5 people together, and a lot of street teams are only that big, to be honest. They do a lot more than just serve guerrilla meals. But just a couple tips to feed your neighbors, right? To serve boxed meals that you would enjoy at home. The idea isn't just like an emergency, right? Only like the basic sustenance. It's to have a meal with your neighbors that are unhoused. So, like I said, you don't need a lot of people, but you do kind of need a location. So if someone has a kitchen that you could borrow, either someone that's participating, or maybe that's all they can offer, right, is their kitchen. Or within your group, you each can cook and then come together. But you will need a location to set up and kind of do an assembly line. So, those folding tables, they travel really well. I've seen people use ironing boards. They're really lightweight. You can carry with them and then set them up somewhere so that you can kind of box everything together, because the idea is whatever you feed to your neighbors is like easy to clean up, easy to eat when you're sitting perhaps without a table. Like, you've got to be practical. But some of the supplies you will need that you maybe don't think of is like gloves for when you're serving food, and all the basic tools that you'll need to keep your cooking hygienic and as allergy free as possible. Utensils for folks, napkins, hand sanitizer, give out beverages as water bottles. Like, this isn't the time to be worried so much about plastic. Who's trying to chime in there? Is someone trying to chime in?
That was me. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is also a very important side note to go with this, for this list of supplies. Have a list have your checklist sort of, and this is not just limited to events like this, but would you have a, a, a multiple of things that you need, especially since you're going to be leaving and going to whatever event? Have your checklist ready to go through, so when you get into the car or whatever vehicle or whatever mode of transportation, you have everything in there, because you will forget something every single time. Lists are your friends.
That's a good, because you will forget some of the things that maybe are like afterthoughts, like the cleanup. Make sure you have garbage bags and the ability to clean up any space that you've used. So if you've used someone's kitchen, leave it cleaner than when you started. If you do use a park or maybe a parking lot, like make sure you don't give people a reason to accost you the next time you're there, right? It looks better than when you came. And the idea, like, get those little boxes to box the food, right? So that people don't have to eat it the second you give it to them. They don't have to eat in an open plate. Like, you're just trying to be as compassionate as possible and as practical as possible for the folks that you're helping out. What was the other thing I thought that people might not think of? Oh, the types of food. Like, even if you aren't vegan and you don't think it's like the lifestyle for you and or whatnot, like, you don't have to ideologically be a vegan, but it's actually safer food handling wise to just make it vegan. And it's also a likelier chance that people will be able to eat it, right? If they are vegan or if they, religiously observe, like, they don't eat meat for religious reasons. So, but that doesn't mean you skip a protein, right? Like, and if you don't know how to cook, like, you can kind of just find ways. Beans are a good alternative, and rice. But yeah, the idea is to give people like well-seasoned, yummy food. And a lot of street teams are doing a great job at this. They do it maybe once a month or once a week, depending on the access to a kitchen you have and obviously the resources. Food is not cheap. Some folks are great at working with local businesses that know what you're doing and will sell you kind of prepackaged meals at a discount, so that you can do that way. So, and when you do this, do not take photos. Do not do it for clout. Just and enjoy the meal yourself, right? Like, make sure you and your comrades sit there and eat with the people that you're serving. It's not just a charity. Like, you brought meal to your neighbors, a dinner. And so that means dessert. Don't forget dessert and a beverage. I just thought we talk about mutual aid a lot on the show as a means to get to where we're going and to help each other there. But we've not really given any tips as to what that mutual aid could look like. And this doesn't have to be like a long-standing thing. Ideally, if you could make it regular, that would be great. But even if you could do this on a one-off, it matters, right? And then you also build networks and levels of empathy within your own community, that we're going to have to lean on in these troubling times. So anybody got any other tips for, mutual aid or guerrilla feedings? Side note, if you do this in the United States, there are a lot of states that actually this is illegal, right? To feed folks from the street. So we call it guerrilla because it's possible that you will be violating bylaws or some regulations somewhere. Cops will actually hand out tickets, like $50 tickets or more in the United States. And if you have repeated violations, they've been arrested for doing this, and they actually make it a point to just go get their ticket, document it on social media, post it, show the state for how heartless that they are, get donations, pay the fine, rinse and repeat over and over again. So all of the advice that we give, especially at the end here, comes with a bit of a warning that it might not always be deeply appreciated by the authorities, and to operate, accordingly. So you want to be as mobile as possible and as discreet as possible. And when you organize these things, so you heard Joe and I joking about it, but do so on Signal. Anytime you're really organizing at this point. I had folks warn me the other day too, and just we kind of take it for granted, but we use Gmail. A lot of us use Google just to share things back and forth. I mean, that I'm guilty of doing that. We have a Gmail account right now, and it's quite easy. Networks can be shown or revealed, through just very simple hacks into our Google, which, as we know, Google hands everything over to United States authorities without much pressure. So let's just keep that in mind as we're organizing moving forward and talking about police states and tactics that, again, aren't really appreciated.
Your most secure tools. Actually, we can probably do that as your next week's tip advice, but
Okay.
we can discuss secure tools.
Excellent. Let's do that. We'll have, because you had a couple of electronic device tips. So although not all our security is cybersecurity, maybe we will talk about that in our next week's activist tip. So look at that. We're almost like 2 hours on the dot this time. That's not, that's impressive, because unpacking the Canadian election, we just skimmed it, and that took about like 45 minutes, and really we didn't even get to talk about the real issues, right? We just talked about the fact that we won't get to talk about them. So hopefully actual issues will come up as the election unfolds, and we'll get to talk about those. But who knows what will hit the headlines before we meet back here next Friday.
Oh, I'm sure we're definitely be discussing the election come next week. If the writ is dropped this weekend as it's expected to, yeah, we'll be talking about it for sure next Friday.
All right. Well, I'll meet you back here, Joe. Actually, you can
Absolutely.
join us anytime. You know where to find us.
Yep.
Noon Eastern here on YouTube. You can also catch us on Joe and Dina's Twitch account.
That's
Sorry,
correct.
it's Dina and Joe.
Yes.
And that's DEA and Joe. And that's Joe. And we could tell you about Dina someday. But
Yes.
yeah, no, I appreciate you folks for unpacking this with me and anybody who's watching. And just keep on disrupting, people. We'll get there.